On today's show, how to make money from your live music streams.
We all like money, and this is 30-minute music marketing.
30-minute music marketing for musicians who want to get better at marketing their music.
Hi, I'm Greg.
Hello, I'm Sheldon, and this is 30-Minute Music Marketing, the show for independent artists and DIY musicians who want to get better at marketing their music. So as we're recording this today, Greg, and as it's being released, we're based in the UK, and there are certain lockdown restrictions that are being eased. However, the days of getting hundreds of sweaty people in a music venue all congregated together in a very tight-knit space, they're probably quite a way off, unfortunately. So
what was you sent me that photo, and I'll actually include it in here. Which theatre was that in Germany?
All I know, it was a theatre in Berlin, and there are very sparse seating arrangements, and indeed every other row is completely removed. I hate to think what percentage capacity that theatre would be operating at. It's probably only something in the region of about 30%. So as we now know, the majority of musicians are now actively embracing live streaming their performances over the worldwide net. That isn't something that's potentially going to go away, and maybe now is the point where a lot of musicians are thinking, well, if I can't go and get money from live shows in venues, I am probably going to have to think about maybe starting to charge for some of the stuff that I do in order that I can get a revenue from my music. So I just thought, obviously we've covered live streams before in episode 31, I believe, making the most of your live stream. So this isn't necessarily going to talk about how to market them. This is just basically how to go about making money or receiving money from your live streams, and perhaps more importantly, what you need to think about before you even start doing that.
Okay, so quite a few things to talk about.
Yeah, so the first thing is that if
I add, before we kind of go into this?
Sorry, Greg.
In terms of I know a lot of people are going to think that this is like the worst time ever to be trying to be a gigging musician. But with doing, obviously myself having to move some of my business online, I have discovered a lot of things, and I actually think it's quite exciting. I know it's not ideal, but at the same time, I think anything that we are going to talk about and have been talking about over the last few weeks, even months now, I think these are all things that can continue in addition to when things go back to normal, whatever normal is.
Whatever normal is, and this is it. I mean, I hate to be a bit of a Debbie Downer, but they do say there might never be a vaccine. So what we have at the moment, and venues and hospitality gradually opening up, it may well be quite a significant period of time before things return back to any sense of normality. And the thing is, we all fear change, and I think musicians, the same as a lot of people, they don't necessarily want to embrace change. We do like doing what we've always done, but like I say, this is probably going to be the norm for quite a period of time. So now, if you haven't maybe started thinking about trying to make money and monetize your live stream performance, probably, possibly as well, because maybe since the start of the lockdown, you've been maybe building that audience online, you've been engaging with that audience online, and now might be the time for you to extract money from the fan bank, to use that particular metaphor that we always use. So let's think about the necessary mechanisms and maybe the things, like I say, you need to put into place before you can make that happen.
Yeah.
And the first thing, Greg, I will say is,
Go on.
Like most musicians, they are probably streaming their performances for free at the moment. And maybe you'll probably wish to continue to do that. But how do you differentiate between the stuff that you give away for free and the paid stuff? Because there's no point you streaming and playing for an hour on Monday night and then saying, "Oh, by the way, I'm doing exactly the same thing on Friday night. However, I want you to pay a tenner for it." That might cause a little bit of friction, and people might just say, "Well, I tell you what I'll do. I'll just wait around for the next free one."
That's a little bit like a band doing a rehearsal session, and they go and do a gig, and they effectively do the same as what they did in the rehearsal session, plus the bar staff.
Yeah, quite possibly. So one of the things that you might necessarily need to do is the free stuff that you put out, that might necessarily have to be reduced in time. So maybe, if you've been playing for half an hour or so, it might be an idea to maybe whittle that down to 15 minutes and say, by the way, folks, I'm going live for a big live streaming special, and it's 60 minutes and it's 90 minutes. So you've got to make a time differential between the free stuff, as in give them a little bit for free, and then basically say, we're now in the market to do paid live shows. And the thing about musicians is that there's always this narrative of the hard up musician, and you'll be doing me a favor if you do this. Basically, you should approach it in that what you're doing has a worth and has a value, and people shouldn't necessarily think twice about paying for it. But like I say, reduce the time of the free stuff in order for you to the longer periods of paid concerts, they do have a little bit more in terms of monetary value.
So with the free stuff, which I suppose in the past we would have just called content,
yes,
rather than advert, if in terms of
live streamed performances from wherever you choose in your own abode, probably.
Would you still encourage putting up a busking tip hat, so to speak, for those things, or do you not put any form of trying to say, cash?
That's a very good question. I think maybe if I was trying to, well, there's two ways to look at it. For that casual audience, which may never transition to spending maybe £7, £8, £9, £10 on a ticket for a streamed show, you can. There's no harm in asking. You could always put that down there, or you could just say, "Look, I'm giving you this for free. I don't want anything for it. Here, you have that." It's a bit like the free sample. It's a bit like going into the days of getting free samples of food from supermarkets. They're no longer
the cheese counter.
Counter. But yes, let's use the cheese counter analogy. You could just say, "Look, I don't want any money for this. You have this," and they'll go, "Oh, this is great." And then when you do ask them to step up and put their hand in the pocket, maybe they'll be more likely. So there's a certain psychology which maybe. Myself as a musician, I would probably prefer the latter. Here, you have this for free, have it for a couple of times, and then at some point further down the line, then you can specifically go for the ask. So again, time differential could be the way to go. Make the free stuff shorter, elongate the paid stuff, just so they're actually getting more. When they do actually stick their hands in the pocket. Another thing to think of is that you might necessarily need to make your paid for streams or paid for concerts just that little bit more special. So it may well be that it's slightly more formal, maybe, in terms of the decor. It's a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Ambience.
Yes, maybe you think more specifically about the lighting. It may well be, we've talked about this in the past in terms of real gigs. You might want to make these paid-for stream performances a little bit special in that they are one-off events. So it may well be that, I always refer to, you might have a specific Queen night where you might do, songs from one particular artist, or you could do, if you've got a specifically extensive back catalogue, you might go, right, well, the first of this month, I'm doing this particular album in its entirety, and next month I might be performing that particular album in its entirety. So you're almost giving people a reason to put your hands in the pockets rather than just paying to get a random selection of songs on the night. And and you might need to specifically step up your stagecraft in terms of making it feel like a proper gig rather than something that you might live stream from the sofa in your front room, which is a little bit more informal. Maybe, you've got to adopt the mindset of, actually, I might be sort of live streaming in my living room, but this is very much a stage and people have bought a ticket. So it can't necessarily be I was going to use a particularly, not exactly rude, so a half-hearted affair. I was going to use an analogy referring to someone's bottom there.
I thought you might. Yeah. So the only thing with the stuff that you just mentioned is that ultimately putting on the show aspect, putting on the the stuff that's in person, so to speak. What do you do about the technology that you are using to capture that performance, or more in this case, share this performance? What do you do about that?
It may well be that you have to. So it may, the majority of people are probably live streaming using nothing more than just their phone. However, if you're asking people to put their hands in their pocket, it may well be that you have to take the next level up and think about incorporating something like OBS into your streaming repertoire, and thinking about maybe external cameras and audio interfaces just to improve the overall product for the person at the other end. I notice that Sleaford Mods, Sleaford Mods, don't you, Greg?
I'm not that familiar with them, but I know they did a track with Left Field.
Yes,
so that's how I know about them.
A big UK band. I saw this very week that they are live streaming a performance from the 100 Club, which is a venue that I particularly play, and I think they're charging £10 a ticket, but they are at great pains to point out in all their publicity and marketing materials that it will be streamed in ultra high definition with super crisp stereo sound. So they're already signalling to their audience that if you're paying a tenner, the man at the mixing desk isn't going to get his phone out and point it at the band. So it may well be that, again, if you're it could well be that your particular setup and the way that you play and the acoustics of the room that you normally perform in, they're perfectly fine. However, it's something that you at least might want to consider, just to make sure that people are getting value for money and a good quality product at the end of the day. Again, if they're putting their hand into their pocket. I
guess lighting is a really important aspect, which is something that I've invested during the lockdown, which I'm using right now.
And I've got mine on. I don't know what colour it's on at the moment.
But yeah, that I think that is important. One thing I was going to ask. So, say for example, you did a gig via Zoom, for example.
Yep.
And people have paid for the invite that you then send out. Would you offer anything more than just the gig? Would you go down the value added route? So say, for example, like this podcast, that we're doing ourselves via Zoom, and I'm recording, would you record it? Would you then give them the opportunity to have that either included or an additional?
Oh, Greg, I like your. I hadn't even thought about the upsells. Yeah, you could do that. You could have a standard ticket, which is very much just access to the stream, or you could have a premium ticket, which enables the person to you could send them the actual MP4 of the performance. You could send them and
you could now do a meet and greet with people individually afterwards, and in a way charge extra for that. So for you in your band with Bernard and stuff like that, you could now start to charge VIP tickets that give the punter all this, because artists have been doing this for ages, and it's a case of they're charging hundreds of dollars to just for basically the same thing. I know it's not quite in person, but at least you're going to speak to someone, and if they like you and they can spend just as a small group of say 6 people.
Yes, yes, that's certainly possible. I like the way that your eyes turn into dollar signs thinking about all that. One thing as well in terms of getting people to pay for live streams, don't just necessarily think that you have to sell tickets for music performances. There's lots of things you could think about. You could have some sort of masterclass, what specific knowledge that you have that you might be able to tutor other people in. For example, you could hold songwriting days. You could teach people how you write your specific sort of songs. What else have I got? I don't know. It could well be that you're a master chef, and you could you could have some sort of cook along session with your audience. So think about your specific skill set. Think about what your audience might want from you. You could be a master knitter or a crocheter, Greg, and you could teach your audience, and you could have a crochet along and charge people money for that.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I noticed, the synthesizer company Korg?
Yes.
They did a Korg cookbook that you could get online. And basically, they just got in contact with a load of musicians who use their equipment and basically said, oh, what's one of your favourite kind of meals? And then basically, so they made this cookbook. I thought initially it was like an audio cookbook. So it'd be loads of, and then I realised it was just to do with cooking, and I switched off because I don't like cooking. But I like the concept and the idea. Yeah.
So again, it may, like, for example, let's go back to Queen. My always go-to example. So as a super fan of Queen, if the drummer Roger Taylor said, right, I'm doing a Zoom behind the scenes of how to, even though I'm not a drum player myself, he said, right, if he said, I'm going to show you how I play all the famous Queen things on the drums, I would probably pay and buy a virtual ticket for that sort of thing. And again, or if one of the Queen engineers showed you, how they specifically mic up a drum kit for a recording session with the band, so, anything like that. Just think about what skills have you got? What can you teach or show people online? That could be something that you could be selling tickets for.
In terms of for a lot of bands who'd like, certainly guitar-based bands and stuff, I've seen a lot of content to do with rig rundowns and stuff like that. So kind of go through, how you create your sounds, and with things like pods and the amp modeling stuff like that, which I know a lot of people do use. It's a way of showing them your world, and as you said, it's a case of I've seen Mark King from Level 42. And I don't play bass, but I want to know how, because I like what he does. I'm like, well, how do you do it? And it's really nice to kind of see, and you kind of go, oh, that's really, really cool. Even though I'm not, like yourself, you're not a drummer, but you'd like to know more about a subject,
about
or
the thing that you like. Yeah, that's it.
And in terms of, I'm sure, and I'm going to say it because you've said Queen, so I'm going to say BT.
Go on then. There we go.
But you'd probably
take a drink.
Yeah, thanks. I'm going to do the same with you and Queen. If he did something like that, at the end of the day, I'm interested. I want to find stuff out.
So there you go. If he was to say, right, I'm going to have a day in the studio and I'm going to look at this particular album that I did. I'm going to pull up the sessions. I'm going to be soloing lots of stuff, and I'm going to be showing you around how I built and created, all this particular, each and every track. And it could well be that he's got, he might have a dozen albums, so that that might be 12 individual online events that people like you could pay money for.
Well, he should do, because I know he set up within his studio, he set up areas of the studio that have been set up to in the way that those albums were created. So EMA and ESCM, he effectively can go because he's set it up as it was back then. And the early albums especially, they're the ones that kind of obviously got my attention from the starting point. I'd love to know how he did it.
Well,
more probably only, from a fan perspective.
If only he'd allow you as a fan to pay him for the privilege.
I might send him a message.
So, which he will probably reply to, because he's good like that now, isn't he?
Oh, he's always been good like that.
Yeah. So though we've set out some of the ground rules, some of the things to think about. So let's try and think about how to get money for what we're doing. And I suppose if we're trying to make money from our streams, you can categorize it into two ways, perhaps. Making money, but not actually selling a virtual ticket as such, and the process is in terms of selling a virtual ticket. Don't worry, you can edit that out. So, firstly, you could, and you sort of intimated this in the first instance, you could stream for free on all your platforms, as many platforms as possible, with, and we have mentioned this before because it is de rigueur when a lot of musicians stream, with that virtual tip jar. And the benefit of that is that you're reaching the biggest possible audience. You're not necessarily going behind some sort of gated paywall. My band took part in a charity event this week, and they decided not to put it behind a paywall as such. The idea was that they stream it live on as many different platforms as possible. So they streamed it live through a website, streamed it live through Facebook, they streamed it live through Twitter, and in doing so they reached the biggest possible audience, and they asked for charitable donations. And so you could watch it for free, you could donate if you were able to donate, and they figured that was the best possible way of reaching the biggest audience. And the more people that you can reach in turn, the more people who are likely to donate. So that's probably the easiest way to go about it, because you're not necessarily setting up any mechanisms in place in order to let money be the thing that allows people behind that sort of paywall. Secondly, you were talking about Twitch before we started this particular
just because the quality is higher.
Yeah, it is obviously a platform that was designed for live streaming from scratch. If people have an Amazon Prime account, they can link it to your Twitch account, and I think in doing so, you get a little tickle, maybe a couple of dollars for that. I think Twitch are now they might be doing some sort of monthly subscriptions, just whereby, on a voluntary basis, you can ask people who watch your streams to, subscribe and donate, almost like a Patreon sort of thing. So, if you base a lot of your streaming around Twitch, again, nothing necessarily behind a paywall, but that is a platform that is almost designed to receive money from viewers, and it's set up that way. And secondly, there is the actual selling tickets. So you could use something like record this, or you could.
Can you repeat that? Just because there was the internet glitch just for a second, so I didn't hear that.
Right.
Just for the viewers and the listeners.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, you can probably snip that bit out. But yes, so you could use Zoom, which is what we're doing at the moment.
Yeah.
And use, or you can also use something like YouTube. To create some sort of hidden URL, and by selling tickets on a platform such as Eventbrite, that would allow you to contact all ticket purchasers for this virtual event and send them the necessary URL. Maybe it's normally done round about 30 minutes or so before you're due to do a performance. One thing I would say is that if I was using YouTube, and the great thing about YouTube is that depending on your connection, the quality is great. It's a platform that everybody has access to,
and everyone knows.
Yeah, I mean, I've got, I don't know about you, but I've got YouTube on my telly, so it's probably more of an entertainment experience than maybe sat watching a laptop in your front room on the coffee table. But I wouldn't necessarily. I'd go for a unlisted link rather than a private link, because for a private link, you've got to include the email address of all the people who've bought tickets, but that email address would then have to correspond with their Google ID sign-in, if you know what I mean.
That's a lot of grief.
Yeah, and I can imagine 10 minutes before you're due to go on, lots of people going, hang on, it's not working, it's not letting me in, and I've paid my money, and you're supposed to be going live in a couple of minutes. So if you just send a unlisted link, people will have access to that. I mean...
Well, we use that for you to kind of, did in the past was I'd send it to you unlisted, give you the link, and you were able to obviously write whatever you needed to and stuff like that. So, and then for you to upload it on your Facebook page and stuff like that. So the unlisted stuff's worked every time, hasn't it?
Yeah, so you can stream live to an unlisted. I had a look at Vimeo as well, but I think to access their live streaming, you've got to go for a premium account, which is something like $75 a month, which is a little bit too rich for my pockets, certainly.
That's a lot. I think they're going to struggle.
Well, it's meant more for high tier content creators, maybe broadcasters, that sort of thing. So again, some sort of virtual, some sort of ticket platform such as Eventbrite. I only use Eventbrite, because people are familiar with it, and it works well within the Facebook infrastructure. And running ads to Eventbrite events is an easy thing to do on Facebook. You don't necessarily have to sell tickets per se. You could let people pay you using something like PayPal, and then contact them on that email address and give them access to a private Facebook group. So you could set up for a specific either concert or series of concerts. You could say, spend £5, $5. I'll email you the link to join this particular private group for my upcoming show or for my upcoming series of shows, and grant them access to that, and then you just stream from your computer or your phone or whatever to that private group. So only the people who have paid whatever amount of money that you're asking for will have access to that particular event. Obviously that one's a little bit more work, because you've got to go through the curation and sending people, but as with all these things, you can use something like Eventbrite, but Eventbrite will take 10% or add 10% to your ticket price, or you could find some more sort of workarounds using PayPal, but that's generally a little bit more legwork. What you generally tend to find, Greg, is that the more you have to pay out for a particular service, that just means that they're doing more of the legwork for you. There's other things to consider as well. There's a company called Side Door. I'm not too sure whether you've ever heard of those.
No.
Well, we're based in the UK. I think the majority of their business is currently in the US at the moment. But what that's designed to do is, it's designed to almost operate on a virtual venue basis. Now we always say, Greg, that promoting a concert is generally a three-party thing. There's normally the promoter, the venue, and the artist. Well, you yourself, you're the promoter if you're going to be sort of live streaming yourself. But if you could somehow get a venue on board, you've potentially got a partner who can help with promotion. So what Side Door does is it almost takes streaming concerts. It allows you to team up with specific venues, so that could well be that a venue that you play at regularly already. It'll give them a percentage of your ticket sales, but what it also does is it allows that venue to co-promote that show on your behalf, thus potentially bringing your show to the attention of more people. So you're bringing it to the attention of the venue's audience as well as your own, and it allows two parties, yourself and a venue, to promote an online show. So I think that's quite interesting. So I'm not sure. I've tried a couple of venues that we play at. They aren't necessarily signed up to that scheme or service at the moment, but I can see how, if one of the venues that I play at, they've got potentially 6 figures of fans on certain social platforms, if you can involve them in the promotion of the show, obviously you're losing a percentage of the ticket revenue, but you are bringing that show to the attention of more people in the process.
And I suppose the one of the best things about this is no capacity.
Yeah.
Effectively, you could, and also the actual outgoing costs are, well.
So you'd still probably be doing the show from home, but it's just getting an extra party on board to help with the promotion, which I know for me as a band or within a band, we do have quite good relationships with a lot of the venues that we play at, and so that if that particular venue was part of that scheme, that's something I'd probably consider, because I know that particular venue has a good relationship with us, and our fans think highly of that particular venue, and it'd be a good way just to draw in a lot of casuals to use that particular. So that's a company called Side Door. We'll stick the URL in the
description
show notes
beneath.
Yes, and I think that's about it. And let's use myself as a particular example. Paid for live streams is something I've not necessarily been thinking about up to now. However, as technically today, the day that we're recording this, is the day that our summer theatre tour should have started. So I am actually now thinking, right, no, and
where were you supposed to be playing?
I was supposed to be playing at St Helens on the day that we're recording this.
Oh, right.
Shocking, yes. So I this is now something which is, as it may well be that live performances aren't going to be on the table for maybe another 6 months. I'm now thinking, paid for live streams, and how do I do it so that even if we only live stream once a month, how can we differentiate maybe 6 specific
How can
concerts?
you make those shows, different shows, even though effectively you're broadcasting from the same environment, but you've got to make it different each time.
Yeah, and to have value for the same audience 6 different times. So for me, the easiest thing may well be doing 6 different themes, potentially playing 6 different albums in full. I've not mentioned this to any of the band yet, so that's just the stuff that's running through my head.
I suppose one thing that you've got is you've already got a lot of material, so effectively you could do each one with a particular theme.
But if I was some sort of acoustic singer-songwriter, I would think about okay, right, well, do 6 different shows concentrating and doing covers from 6 different artists, or I'd have a rockabilly night, and I'd have a country night or a rock night, and just thinking of different ways to make each show different, special, and a one-off occasion.
One question for you.
Carry on.
In terms of, for those who are not necessarily performing all of their own material, where do we stand with PRS? If for example you use YouTube, they have all the necessary licenses in place. What tends to happen with... But where do you stand if you've sold tickets to a unlisted YouTube? Do YouTube's algorithms still know that you've performed another person's song? But do you have to pay something out of yours for PRS, or is that all just taken care of by YouTube?
I think YouTube would only be able to identify... Well, they have various listening algorithms. Sometimes it's quite easy. It's scary what they can pick up on. But what they also work off a lot as well is they look at the title of the video. So if you're doing a cover either on Facebook or YouTube and you stick the title Firework Katy Perry cover, then it doesn't take a great amount of computational power to go, I know this is a cover version, and depending on who the publishers or record company are, they may well silence that, or it's easy for YouTube to then allocate a proportion of the royalties from that. I think if you're going live on Facebook, I don't think it's easy for them to like take a 60-minute stream and go, all right, well, that particular song, that 3 minutes is of that particular song from that artist and that. So I think Facebook, if you're just doing one long live stream, it's hard for them to allocate any specific monies. I do get a little bit of publishing PRS monies from Facebook, but not that much. But as I said, live generally tends to be a different sort of kettle of fish. So I don't think you necessarily would need to pay anything specifically on something like a Facebook stream. And if the algorithm on YouTube picks something up, they
sort it out anyway. Yeah. So one final question then: out of all the platforms that you've talked about and we've talked about, which one would you use for your paid stuff?
I think I would probably consider YouTube, just because you can send people an unlisted URL. You can stream to that URL. It's something that everybody's familiar with, because like even on Zoom, I know there's quite a lot of people who now have Zoom and are au fait with using it, but there may well be, again, depending on the age and demographic of your audience, just the very act of asking them to download Zoom and get it working on a laptop or a phone, it may well prove too much.
There's some people who still seem to think the Chinese want all your details. They seem to forget that it's been a business conference tool for years. And most businesses don't tend to use something if it's unsecure. Bless them.
So if you
she knows who I'm talking about.
Whoever you're sending a YouTube link to, like I say, most people are going to be au fait with that running on whatever equipment they have. So that would be my sort of personal preference. So I know that I think me and you might be making some, we're going to try and work out some of the technical logistics ourselves. If it may well be that we include it as maybe some bonus content for the podcast. Who knows? Yeah.
And also the other thing, as you said, which I think a lot of people forget, is the fact that YouTube's on most people's televisions these days. So you don't have to sit and look at it with a computer. You can listen to it with your sound bar and everything else like that. And I think, it would be a far more rewarding experience for a family or families. That's okay. Even you can't have friends around your house yet, can you?
You can't. No, only in the back garden. So if you set the TV up at the window, or poking out of the conservatory, that's actually possible. That's actually possible.
So the funny thing is, though, in terms of is in some respects, people are already used to what you're proposing, because pay-per-view's been out for years. So with wrestling, with sports events and stuff like that. So in that, we're not really reinventing the wheel.
No, the landscape has changed, and I do wonder, as venues open up potentially with reduced capacity, how many people, how many venues are going to be live streaming on the night, and it may well be that for quite some time to come, the norm for buying a ticket to a show is you're one of the lucky people who might be able to buy a in-person ticket, let's call it that, maybe at a specific sort of premium, or buy a live stream for the show. I mean, I'm quite lucky in that a lot of the venues that I play, they are of the higher capacity venues that are probably able to invest in cameras and all sorts of streaming equipment. And I do think that a lot of the larger venues will be taking that as an option. And I know that isn't something that's ever really been thought about before, but this has been such a massive sea change that I do think that from now on, whenever there's any sort of big concerts or even small to medium-sized concerts, there'll be two options when you go to your ticket provider. There'll be an in-person ticket, and there'll be a virtual ticket.
I just hope they don't put a massive premium on the in-person ticket. I would like to hope it was a bit like trying to get tickets for Wimbledon, where it's a bit of a, you buy your tickets and they just, they, say for example, they can allow 100 people into the venue in person, and they just and they've sold, and they just pick out 100 random tickets for there, and if you get that, you can go in person, rather than just giving it to just for people who the wealthy. I think that would be crap.
Yeah, I do appreciate that. For a lot of artists, they do charge a lot for their concert tickets in order to make up from the loss of revenue from streaming. I can't help think that for, again, a lot of artists, those prices are going to be pushed up even further to compensate for the loss of increased capacity in venues. But we shall see. We shall see. We're at the start of this transitional period, so we will just see what transpires.
But coming back to what I said right at the beginning, I actually do think this is quite an exciting time. I'm trying to see the good out of it rather than just go, I mean,
because who knows? It may well be that we can, a lot of the venues that I play, say for example, in our out of town venues, they're 400 capacity, and it may well be that we're still able to sell a good number of several hundred tickets, and who knows what potential audience there might be for each and every show out there that we simply haven't been able to tap into before. So until somebody starts to test this, and once live music starts up again, it'll be interesting to see how many people who are sat at home who would never have gone out because of childcare issues or the venues potentially sort of too far. It could well be that we're tapping into an audience and we're able to get money from an audience that we've never been able to before. So
I mean, that's the thing. Your ticket price effectively could have been the same price as just the taxi home.
Indeed.
A price of a few pints.
The charity thing that I contributed to earlier on this week, they were basically saying that this is a streamed version of a show that would have taken place in a real venue, and if you could contribute the price of a drink that you would have had in the interval or the cost of your taxi home. So as we know, the cost of going to a show, the ticket price is only a small proportion of how much you'll spend over the course of 5 or 6 hours in terms of transport, potentially a meal as well before, and then drinks aren't cheap, Greg.
No, they're not. So anyway, smash that subscribe button.
Yes, if you've got a particular question. We had a nice email. It wasn't necessarily from about this particular topic, but can you remember the name of the chap who sent us a great email this week?
His name's Jim Hustwit.
Hi, Jim.
Found you. Thanks for your nice email. Yes, I've spoken to Sheldon about this, and I think this is something we're going to look at some point, possibly in the future. But I'm glad that you've been able to keep things going during these tough times that we are all suffering. So, but yeah, I think basically to summarize his email is about the fact that, you have to be able to adapt, and there is the potential of this becoming fairly lucrative if you're prepared to adapt.
If you can find ways to monetize your skill set. I mean, the thing is that we don't necessarily like even thinking about, I'm going to have to do something new now in order to try and make some money. And I don't know, the inclination is always to stick to what you do and potentially what you're sort of best at. But, we have to adapt and improve just to keep those dollars coming in.
Yeah.
And I think for musicians, it has always been about what we used to call a portfolio career. So being a musician, you used to be maybe going out gigging Friday and Saturday and doing a little bit of teaching, either privately or for educational institutions during the week, and maybe a little bit of session work here or there. And that is now still the case, but the activities that we do in order to generate those monies are just having to adapt slightly to for the remote world.
So, well, thank you for watching and
listening on the podcast.
And we will do another one, hopefully sooner than this one. But it's a topsy-turvy world.
It is. It's a strange world that we're living in, and I'm doing all sorts of different things about. I've done the band accounts for the past week or so, which has kept me busy. So, but enough of financials. I don't want to talk about Excel. Yeah. Right, everybody, stay safe. We'll see you on the next episode. Take care.
Take care.
Bye. Bye.